It's Thursday, August 24th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show presented by Toyota. It's a hell of a day to talk ball. And joining me to do just that, first-time guest on the program, it's Fantasy Life's Kendall Valenzuela. Kendall, what's up?
Hello, Matt. How's it going? I'm super excited to be here. I've, got my whole list in front of me of breakouts, and I'm pumped. I've been looking forward to this.
I have been looking forward to breakouts, not just because you were going to be on the show, but also we had to do, quote busts yesterday. We had to do, the guys that you're avoiding in each round. And I'm just not really about that negativity. I want to talk positive here. So I'm glad to have you on the show to do that. Kendall, because you are a first-time guest, because people might not be familiar with you, tell the people about what you do, what your kind of role is at Fantasy Life and everything you got going on there this season.
Yeah. So senior analyst and director of social media over there at Fantasy Life. So we've got great stuff we cooked up this season. We've got the brand new website over there. So everything social, you can follow us at MB Fantasy Life. Everything you see there is, from me and the team and the graphics department, we do a great job. And then on SiriusXM, 5 days a week now. So we're going 8 to 11 Pacific time. And it's super fun. I've got Dwayne McFarland 3 days a week. I've got Ian Hartitz, Peter Overzet's coming back. So it's a great group, but that's where you can mainly find me is the social media stuff. And then live on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio.
Awesome. Love to see it. People should definitely be checking out the great crew that you guys have there. All right. Again, we are continuing Convictions Week here with breakout candidates. Kendall has her list. I have my list. We will get to that in just a minute, but we do have a few light pieces of news to touch on here. First, little injury roundup for the Carolina Panthers, because listen, when you can lead a late August podcast heading into peak fantasy draft season, talking about one of the least inspiring skill position groups in the entire NFL, you absolutely have to do it. First of all, we got DJ Chark. He is out with a hamstring injury now. Frank Reich declined to expand on the situation at this point. Joe Person, my guy, has covered the team forever. He said doesn't sound great. Frank Reich, he does say that he's not anticipating any other big moves at the receiver position. I mean, no kidding. There's not really any big moves to make, but they're going to continue to evaluate this day by day. This is important, Kendall, because the Panthers might have been like the worst receiver room in the NFL, or at least like the least inspiring one on paper. And now they're banged up with Chark. Terrace Marshall is out he's sidelined multiple weeks here with a back injury. Laviska Shenault, who they're sort of kind of trying to say like is going to be the next Deebo Samuel, and he's not going to be the next Deebo Samuel. He's in the concussion protocol, and Damiere Byrd, back with the Panthers for the second time, has been placed on IR. So I ask you, DJ Chark, I said yesterday he was a guy that I wasn't even drafting in the 13th round anyways. Like, he's not one of my favorite receivers in the world. But how do we approach this receiver core now? It's not an offense that's looked good in the preseason anyways.
You're going to do our guy, Adam Thielen, like that? You're just going to totally bury Adam. No, I'm totally kidding. I'm not going to start the show off like that. But no, I would say for me, it is a really gross wide receiver room. Like it's not fun to draft. Whenever we do videos for them, it's not fun to talk about on the radio. And we get it. They're really gross. I think I would say if DJ Chark does come out and it's really serious and it's something that, lingers for weeks and you have to look around, I think the one person that I'm drafting right now on the Carolina Panthers is Jonathan Mingo. That's the one where it's late round, so you don't have to spend a ton of your draft capital on them, right? You don't have to go in and be passing up really, solid mid-round running backs. This is a whole squad, honestly, the whole Carolina Panthers squad you can wait on. So when I'm in my drafts and I look around and I say, man, I really just need to add someone to my wide receiver room that could have a good connection with Bryce Young, I go look at Jonathan Mingo. He didn't flash a ton, right? When you go look at, we've got our rookie supermodel tiers and you can go see what everything that Dwayne McFarland put out on him. But for me, Jonathan Mingo just seems like the guy, if I was going to try and pick someone that could maybe rise to the top and just say, okay, he's going to be a boomer bust. It's going to be tough, especially to know when to start him. But if you're in best ball drafts right now, he's been one of my favorite late round wide receivers, especially after we've seen him in the preseason pop off a little. Again, it's going to be gross. Like, you're not going to love doing it. But if there's anyone that could rise to the top, I think I would rather just take my chances on Jonathan Mingo instead of Adam Thielen. And now if Chark is done for a little while, I think he's the best bet that you can make.
Yeah, I think Thielen's going to give you that kind of safe production. I don't think he's totally toast, but I like how they're playing him in the slot too in the preseason. That's kind of the role I think at this point. Typically these veteran receivers that you see decline outside, move to the slot. I think about got to get my Allen Robinson reference in. You think about Robinson in Pittsburgh. That would be a potential saving grace for him if he's going to do anything at the NFL level going forward. I think with Thielen the same thing. But I'm a Mingo fan. I'm glad you brought him up. He's a guy who I think sort of profiled as like a big slot receiver, maybe a flanker type in the NFL. So and DJ Chark was going to be their X receiver. So you think about Mingo as that guy who's going to move around the formation, who's going to be detached from the line of scrimmage. I like that role for him a lot. A bit more of a developmental guy, like you mentioned, didn't have like the best collegiate history or anything, but yeah, I think he's a great late round pick that could jump into sort of the sort of a starting role by the end of his rookie season. So maybe not a guy in like redraft leagues that you're drafting, but somebody that by the end of the year could be like on waiver wire speed dial.
Yeah, exactly. He's got, that's the thing. Like, I'm not telling you, please don't go into redraft and just say, yeah, this is my guy. But he does, like you said, he's got the big play threat. He's strong after contact. So he could mesh really well with Bryce Young. And we're sitting here and trying, thinking we're going to have to wait a little while to see what Bryce Young is and who he could be. But towards the middle of the season and when we're going into especially our fantasy football championships, like maybe that's someone that pops off a little bit later. Like I don't want to say Christian Watson-esque, but there could be a situation, especially with that big playability, that he could step up towards the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. Again, expectations low for all these rookie receivers to start the year, but Mingo is a guy that I mentioned on the Sleeper show that could be a second half of the year riser. They might need him to rise sooner than that, considering this injury. I will say one piece of good news here for the Carolina Panthers. Miles Sanders, who'd been dealing with a groin injury, said he's absolutely going to be ready for week 1 against the Falcons. I think, Kendall, we need to start thinking about this from a running back receiver perspective. These guys, think about Miles Sanders last year, Philadelphia Eagles. You're Jalen Hurts. You're sitting there, you're going to drop back, you're going to look for Devontae Smith, you're going to look for A.J. Brown, you're going to look for Dallas Goedert. You're not throwing the ball to Miles Sanders, right? We know that historically, rushing quarterbacks are not going to throw the ball to their running backs anyways, but even if Jalen Hurts didn't have that rushing dimension, you're going to throw the ball to these alpha receivers on the outside, or you're going to throw the ball to Dallas Goedert. Yeah, that's not the case, as we're saying here, for Bryce Young dropping back, especially behind a leaky offensive line. I remain convinced that Miles Sanders is going to have a big receiving role this year, even though he doesn't historically do that. Am I wrong for thinking this?
You know what? I will always say, because I am very optimistic, and when I'm with some of the guys at Fantasy Life, they really want to just say it's not going to happen. I want to believe that there is a big time 3-down role waiting for Miles Sanders, and he is just going to take it and run with it, and he's going to have a fantastic season. The other part of me, though, and the one that has me fading him just a little bit, is that I just think where he's going in drafts for me, like, I would rather wait. I would rather get the J.K. Dobbins. I would rather get the Damian Pierces. Or even, you can go further with Javonte Williams, and you can say James Cook in the same breath. And you can say, I want to wait for these guys, because while I do want Miles Sanders to have that big 3-down role, I just don't know if he's going to be able to take that big 3-down role, even if they do give it to him, and have him, seriously outperform his current ADP. And I really hope that I do end up being wrong, because I loved the signing. I loved, if you want to follow the money and you're someone that does that, the 4 years, 24, 25 million, it's all right there for him. And so I want to believe that he's going to do it. I also, if you're looking at guys around the same ADP, I'm going with other ones, like I said, like J.K. Dobbins, like James Cook, because I just feel that I'm a little bit more confident with them in their offenses.
He's one of these very team sensitive, team dependent guys to me, where I think he's like a small hit, small miss player, where I think like the floor and ceiling are pretty close to right about where he's going. Like, I think from a floor perspective, he probably, again, he's going off the board right now, consensus ADP, running back 19. I think he probably doesn't finish any lower if he stays healthy the entire season. It's like running back 22, 23, right? That's sort of the floor for him. But I think the ceiling, though, it's maybe running back 15, 16. So again, small hit, small miss guy. So if you're just looking, you faded running back early, you're kind of looking in that hero RB perspective build. I think he makes sense there. But like, if I've already taken a second running back, I like some of those swings you mentioned there and maybe we'll mention a few of them later.
I hope so.
I hope so. So I think we're kind of on the same page with Sanders, but I do think from a passing game perspective, he's probably going to get that role, and he will, again, which helps the floor there, build that up, because, again, you're not throwing a bunch of balls to Laviska Shenault. I don't care what anybody says from the preseason. Let's talk about a team that's actually going to be really good this year, most likely. There's a lot of little whispers I want to cover with the Jets here. By the way, are you watching Hard Knocks at all? I'm not.
Yeah, I've watched one. I watched the opening because I felt as someone in social media, I was like, oh, I should look if there were some, memes for this. Like, you remember, I think it was last year when we had Jerry Jones pouring salt on the Big Mac. I was like, I need one of those if it's going to happen. And it didn't happen. So I've only watched one. That's all I can say.
You got through the Aaron Rodgers propaganda episode and, and you kind of said no.
And then
more.
I said, okay, I understand what's going on here. And then I stopped.
Yeah. I've heard it's been better since, but I listen, I don't have more hours of my day to dedicate to football. Like, I don't need to, although I said that and I'm watching the Netflix. I did finish the Netflix quarterback show, which was really good, but we're not here to talk. We're not here to talk football TV. We're talking about the Jets here. Couple of whispers from the wide receiver rooms, a couple tweaks that's going on here. The Athletic's Zach Rosenblatt believes that Randall Cobb, who I think did have a couple of Hard Knocks moments this past episode, will play a bigger role in this offense than expected. Cobb has been getting more first-team snaps than McCole Hardman in the recent days, according to Rosenblatt. I say all this, Kendall, because we know Garrett Wilson is, I think, going to the moon this year. I think Garrett Wilson is an emerging superstar in the league. I've talked about his reception perception profile many times. Like, he has some great historical indicators from a success rate versus press perspective. But is there anybody else in this offense that has you mildly interested? Because at this point, it's kind of, I think the three receiver set in week one is going to be Aaron Rodgers' old buddies plus Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, again, we're really excited about this Jets offense. But when you're looking around and saying, okay, if you want a piece of this offense, right, and you don't get Garrett Wilson, you don't get Breece Hall, you're kind of looking around and saying, okay, which one? Yeah. It's almost a guess. You know what I mean? And I we know Aaron Rodgers. And here's the thing with them, too. When you look down the list and you say, okay, Alan Lazard has an ADP of 124. I mean, all of these guys are going 124 plus, right? So it's Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall to the moon with Aaron Rodgers, and then you're guessing. So for me, if I am picking someone late round, it has been Lazard. It hasn't felt incredibly great. But if I want to complete a stack, if I want to make sure that I have someone else in there just in case, we never want injuries, but if we want to prepare for them, that's what's going to happen. Corey Davis, not so much, and not Randall Cobb. So I would say, that's probably where I'm going is Lazard. And again, doesn't feel great. But it does feel, I don't know about you, Matt, but sometimes I look down the list of that depth chart and I say, someone's going to be like a serious thorn in our sides with Garrett Wilson. If you have Garrett Wilson, like there's going to be some of these weeks where you just look around and you say, what's going on? And he's thrown to his old buddies and he's old Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. So I'm prepared for that, but it's Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall to the moon. And then if you look around and you do really want a slice of this offense, that's where I'm going is probably Lazard.
If you take Garrett Wilson, and by the way, I think you should take Garrett Wilson in your drafts this year. Just be ready. Week 1, Buffalo Bills. Week 2, Dallas Cowboys. Week 3, New England Patriots. That's a tough slate of defenses there. Be ready to have your curse words for Randall Cobb, okay? Yes. Because if Cobb is going to be like the slot receiver for this team in the first couple of weeks, just you got to be ready to live with that and not be freaking out about it. Because I think over the course of the season, Garrett Wilson's going to have a great year. But these guys that he is, I mean, that was the clip I saw making the rounds on social media with Randall Cobb, was him saying to these younger receivers, we had mistakes in our room today. And if he doesn't trust you, he's not going to throw you the ball. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't think you're running the right route, he's not going to throw you the ball. He obviously being Aaron Rodgers. So this stuff is important. I just think and I'll transition this to the running back talk in a second. But my thought with to think about receiver quality plus targets to the running back. I don't know where you stand on Breece Hall. For me, I think I've been taking the discount on Breece Hall. If he's going to fall to that late 4th, even 5th round range after the Dalvin Cook signing, Aaron Rodgers said on having let's debunk a conspiracy theory here real quick. Okay. And I already fully realized when we're talking about Aaron Rodgers and conspiracy theories. I think a lot of people say that Aaron Rodgers made them go get Dalvin Cook. He wants Dalvin Cook. Aaron Rodgers did say about having Breece Hall back, quote, I said there was a huge difference when Wilson was out there on the field, and I feel the difference when Breece is on the field is also substantial. Breece is just a different speed. In practice, he caught a pass and hit 21 miles an hour. Okay, whatever. He looks like he's cruising. This is the thing. I think if we're looking at a 3 receiver set of Garrett Wilson, who's a superstar, Alan Lazard, who's probably better as a 3, but he's going to be their number 2. No Corey Davis, and Randall Cobb as a 3. I think Breece Hall is set for a really big receiving workload in this offense, and I'm obsessed with his David Johnson-esque receiving workload. So where do you stand on Breece Hall at this point?
Well, now you're getting me even more pumped up than I already was. I was already high on Breece Hall, and now I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, if he gets that, pass game work, like count him in. Count me in for sure. I love Breece Hall, especially where he's going right now. People are really scared. People are not drafting Breece Hall, and he is falling down these draft boards, Matt. And I've been in some drafts where it doesn't make sense to me, but I also understand when people see the queue and they get really nervous and they say, oh, is he going to be good for week 1? And I think everything that we've read coming into this season looks good. You got the Cook signing, and that is definitely significant because that does take a little bit away from Breece Hall. But I look at that Cook signing and I say, okay, this is a 1A, 1B situation. I don't think this is here's 1, here's number 2. I think that they work together. And I think that when they sign Cook and when they did that, I looked at it and I said, okay, they're going to be okay bringing Breece Hall back a little slower than normal, right? They don't want to push him. They know what they have in him. So I'm taking up all the Breece Hall shares that I can at his current ADP. I think he's sitting right now around 43. And to me, that's a huge discount. So I'm buying the dip and I'm saying, okay, but I'm also, when I'm doing that, I'm making sure that I have another running back around him that I know is going to help cushion maybe some of the softer games that he plays in the first, let's just say 3 weeks. So I'm making sure that someone on my team around me is going to put up some big fantasy numbers just in case they do bring him back slowly. He had a really bad injury. So you just have to make sure you're okay with that. But you're not going to be taking zeros with Breece Hall unless he just completely doesn't play, which it looks like he's on track to play. So I'm with you. I'm all in on Breece Hall this year.
Yeah, I drafted a team in one of our mocks where I took Breece Hall and then I took Javonte Williams, and that's the dumbest thing you could do. No, that's the dumb. No, that is not nice.
No,
I'm ready. So dumb.
I'm like, nice. It was like my first. That is a little. That's what I was doing.
Way too risky.
That's what I was doing when Kamara, when we didn't know his suspension. I had a team with I think Kamara, and it was the same thing. And then I was like, oh well, Breece Hall's who I took first, and then it was Kamara, and then I was like, oh look at Javonte, and I was like, oh my god, I can't do this to myself. That could be 3 zeros across the board.
Yeah, you're just taking
weeks.
All L's in September. But conversely, I think because I love what you're saying there, it's team sensitive again with Breece Hall, where you take a guy like him, you're not going to take a Javonte Williams, you're going to take an Alvin Kamara. Maybe you're taking a James Conner, who's going to play in the Cardinals offense, but he's going to get a boatload of touches to start the year. Jamal Williams, who's probably going to start for the Saints in the first 3 weeks of the season. So maybe those are the guys you're going for to sort of insulate yourself from Breece Hall. I just think that, again, that receiving role is really important for him, and what makes him sort of, I think there is a big miss potentially if you take Breece Hall in the 4th, 5th round, but there's a big win there too. So I continue to kind of take him in team dependent builds. I will say, last thing on the Jets here, this is the one area that fantasy dorks are not talking enough about, and it is the area that I think matters most with the New York Jets offense this year. The Jets offensive line saw some significant movement, and my God, let's hope it's positive movement because this unit needs it. Even Rodgers said recently, I need to know who the starting 5 is. Probably because the starting 5 has been rotating a lot in camp. It has not been good. The Jets moved Mekhi Becton to right tackle for practice and said he's going to start the preseason finale Saturday night against the Jets. I mean, Becton has had a rocky career, but has looked good in the preseason and has apparently gotten back in shape. Having him emerge as the starting right tackle would be great. Hours later, the Jets activated offensive tackle and Henrico VA's finest, by the way, Dwayne Brown, shoulder injury off the PUP. Look, Brown played injured in 2021. He's 30. He's going to be 38 years old this year. Thought about retiring in the offseason, but he's probably their best option as their starting left tackle. So I remain, kind of convinced that if the Jets are they're going to sink at some point this year, it's going to be because of this offensive line. So I at least think these two, they're not solutions necessarily, but they're the best that we're going to get at this point.
I would agree with you. When I saw this on the rundown, I was like, okay, because, for us, Matthew Friedman does great work to do all the projections that we have. And he's really big on making sure that everyone in the fantasy community knows about everyone that's not a tight end, that's not a running back, that's not a quarterback, that's not a wide receiver. So you look at it and it really does come down to injuries. Because if you have Brown and Becton miss a combined 20 games, you're done. It's not good. You can't have that. So when you look around and you have to say, okay, you just want to, and you hope and you pray that everyone stays healthy. And then maybe a couple guys just come in and just have one of those, kind of Pro Bowl caliber seasons. Like that's what you just need to look at here. And we just need to manifest and just hope that it stays really, really good throughout the whole season, because we all deserve a good Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets season this year. But I do agree with you that offensive line could be a little bit problematic. Even if one goes down, right, for an injury for a few weeks, that's really, it's a trickle down effect from there.
And again, they're going to get tested to start the year.
Yeah.
The Bills in week 1, Von Miller might start the year on PUP. I wouldn't even say if he plays in week 1, he's going to have a full complement of snaps. But like Greg Rousseau might bounce back this year. Mm-hmm. Their defense overall has been quality. I mean, frickin' Micah Parsons in week 2, Matt Judon and the boys in week 3. So we're going to know pretty early on this offensive line whether it's a problem or not.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue Convictions Week on the podcast by identifying the fantasy breakouts you need to know here in 2023. All right, we continue Convictions Week on the podcast by highlighting the top breakout candidates of the 2023 football season. Kendall and I have each compiled our own Andy Barron style secret list of 8 to 10 of our favorite breakout candidates of the year across every position. But first, Kendall, let's establish some mild guidelines and guardrails on what is a quote breakout. And just real quick, the fantasy police. I mean, my God, my wife's cousin is even in my DMs this morning. Like, you can't call this guy a breakout. You can't, like, I get it. Listen, I'm not going to come here and tell you Garrett Wilson's a breakout candidate because he's going in the second round of the draft. We all know that, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you Chris Olave is going to break out in his second season. Okay. There's a certain point to where I'm not going to say that, but to the fantasy police out there, just like sleeper police, from what I ranted about a couple of days ago, relax. All right. We're basically saying these guys are going to be better than expectation this year. And I don't know, where do you stand on this whole thing? Because I get irritated when it's like, oh, this guy finished as wide receiver 25. You got to be top 24 to be a breakout. Give me a break. What are these arbitrary numbers?
And we're positive people, Matt. We're not going to come out here. I'm sorry. I can't give you I can't give you someone that's going in like an ADP of 216 right now. And I'm not going to give you a name like that and then just say, hey, here you go. So that when he does do poorly, you're like, he was a breakout. Like, no, you made me do that. So I'm with you. I'm always positive. I'm always there. And for me, a breakout is someone that really outperforms what we've seen from previous seasons, right? That to me is my breakout. So it could be a household name, but maybe it's someone because it's just, the fantasy community is really high on some players when we go into these season and we have our guys. So if it's someone and you say, oh, he had a really good season last year. Yes, but he could jump from wide receiver 3 to a wide receiver 1 type. That to me is a breakout. It's like, yes, we understand that maybe he had glimpses of a good season last year, but it's really taking all of that and jumping into that, wide receiver 2 RB1 mark that makes the difference.
100%. It's like basically this guy made the leap, right? Shout out to my pals around the NFL. They used to do this all the time. The making the leap guys every year, and hit and miss like what it always is when making predictions. But basically that's what these guys are. Maybe they showed us something, but we think they're going to take it to another level. And maybe they're taking it from being a wide receiver 5 type guy to a wide receiver 3, or maybe they're going to go from 3 to 1, right? Same thing at running back. So I think we're on the same page here. Just want to establish that because I know the breakout police are going to be up in my mentions for this, but it is what it is. All right. I'm not going to repeat any names except my first guy. I'm not going to repeat any names that we did from the sleeper show. Okay. I'm not going to mention any ones, but if Kendall does, then we're just going to reinforce the point. We're going to take it as a big stamp of approval. Same as if we both pick a player. We'll just take it as a big stamp of approval. So Kendall, as the guest, I will let you get us started here.
Ooh, all right. Well, let's start with wide receivers then, because they're juicy. We sometimes got a lot to pick from depending on where you're looking. And so I'm going to go out and I'm going to say and start with Packers wide receiver Christian Watson. I'm going to say Christian Watson as a first breakout, only because, and I have to give Dwayne McFarland a shout out because he's been preaching Christian Watson since last season, right? This was a big guy that when the utilization report came out, said, hey, let's do this. And so when we look at Christian Watson, and we know that he battled injuries early in 2022, but when he took on that full-time role in week 10, right, Matt, that's when his average target share was 23%. He averaged a wide receiver 1 worthy the 17.2 PPR points per game. It just all connected for him. So when I say Christian Watson, I think that he maybe even we say continues his little breakout. He tampered off a little bit towards the end of last year, but I'm making a bet on Christian Watson. And I think that also goes along with making a bet on Jordan Love. Like, I think Jordan Love playing behind and learning from Aaron Rodgers is not going to be as bad as people say or think he is. So for me, Christian Watson, especially going into year 2, which is kind of pivotal when we see a jump for these wide receivers, especially, and people can go and check that out at fantasylife.com. We have a whole breakdown on it, but that's really when we do start to see these jumps of, okay, he was good last year, but now he's going to make a leap in knowing this offense a little bit better, being more familiar with everyone. And so Christian Watson's someone to me that I really love this year.
Yeah, I think he makes sense as a guy that is a breakout candidate as that level jumper. Like, we already saw him be good last year. Can he take his game to another level? My 2 big questions with Christian Watson, who I don't have on my list, is number 1, I do think if he's going to be a true number 1 wide receiver, we've got to see him get better on like these base NFL routes. You know, in reception perception, he was below average on like curls, digs, slants, those kind of base NFL routes. But where he's really good, Kendall, he's really good, right? After the catch, he's awesome. Vertical routes, some of the best vertical route success rates I charted last year were by Christian Watson. So we know he's going to give you week winning potential. From just an NFL like receiver standpoint, I do think there's areas to improve on. That's not what has me kind of, again, not I'm not going to say hesitant or like I'm out on Christian Watson, but just like I'm within consensus on Christian Watson. I've got him sort of in a tier of guys that I really like drafting, right? The other thing I think is a little concerning, I think right now, industry-wide, we're sort of assuming that he's just going to be like this dominant target earner, which he was last year for the Green Bay Packers. I know Dwayne has outlined that. He's come on the show and outlined that. I will say that, like, you know, Romeo Doubs, I don't think Romeo Doubs is a future star or anything, but he's healthier this year. He's had a good offseason. He's Mr. Offseason. I get that. But like, Jaden Reed's a rookie I like. Luke Musgrave is going to moonwalk into the starting tight end job.
Yeah.
And Aaron Jones is still going to, you know, kind of have a passing, like a passing down role. So I think this, you're right though. This, as much as it is a bet on Christian Watson, it also has to be a bet on Jordan Love here, supporting multiple guys.
Yeah, no, and I agree there too. So that's why when I say I wanted to start a little hot and then we just go down from there and do some names that are like, okay, this makes sense. Christian Watson, though, for me especially, is that if the Packers do make him that centerpiece of this passing attack, and he gets schemed up really well, Matt, and it all works out, because I agree. I really like Jaden Reed. I'm taking Jaden Reed over Romeo Doubs. I think he will eventually leapfrog Romeo Doubs this year. I really like Luke Musgrave. It doesn't make sense where Luke Musgrave is going right now in drafts, because he is, like you said, I mean, he has been given the starting tight end, spot. So I look at this whole team and I say, okay, if I'm going to bet on Jordan Love, I'm going to bet also on Christian Watson. And I really do believe, and maybe he's not going to be absolutely phenomenal, but I really do think there is something to being behind Aaron Rodgers, who, you know, we can throw everything out the door if people do or don't like him. He's a really damn good quarterback. And so learning from him and being behind him for that long, I think there's something to that for the Packers to have been able to say, okay, we're finally ready. It's time we can do this. So I'm taking a bet on Christian Watson along with Dwayne and really the whole Fantasy Life staff. And I'm okay with hoping that he is that centerpiece and that he just continues that dominance for, you know, more than the small sample size that we got last year.
I like him a lot more than some of the other like volatile receivers that go after like the wide receiver, outside the top 15 guys. I like him a lot. And listen, Jordan Love has looked good in the preseason, so you can hang your hat on Jordan Love's preseason performance. I'll go with a second-year receiver here, and this is the only name that's a repeat from the Sleeper show. Scott brought him up. Listen, Scott cheated. I told him to stay out of dudes in the first 7 rounds. And Jahan Dotson at that time was going at 7.12 in consensus ADP. So Scott was cheating anyway. So I get to mention him here on the Breakout show. And this is obviously timely with Terry McLaurin, who's going to be dealing with the turf toe injury to start this year. And I hate that because I'm a huge Terry guy. But Jahan Dotson, man, I think had just an underrated, awesome rookie season. Actually, if you're purely box score scouting, he actually kind of had a similar season to Christian Watson. And he doesn't get talked about in the same light from a fantasy perspective, which is, you know, I guess understandable because one of them is the number 1 receiver and one of them is the number 2 receiver. But I think Jahan Dotson is also playing with a questionable quarterback. I think Jordan Love, even if we're excited, is still a questionable quarterback. But I think he showed more complete receiver ability, Jahan Dotson, in his rookie season. I mean, this is a guy, Kendall, I liked a lot coming into the NFL. I thought he was going to be sort of like a Doug Baldwin type of vertical slot receiver. His reception perception profile was great. Zone beater, best hands in the class that year. And there was a lot of good players that came out, obviously, last year as rookie receivers. But he even outkicked my expectations. 81.1% success rate versus zone. I thought that was going to be the case, but they played him almost exclusively outside, and he had an 87th percentile success rate versus press in reception perception. That was impressive. Top 10 contested catch rate. If anybody's had experience playing with erratic quarterbacks, it's Jahan Dotson if you watched him back at Penn State. So at this point, Jahan Dotson going off the board, consensus ADP, 84th overall, 36th wide receiver. I love taking him in that group of volatile wide receivers. Love the talent. Obviously, with the situation, again, we'll see how good Sam Howell is. But, man, from a breakout receiver standpoint, he's one of my favorite bets this year.
I love the call out because, and unfortunately, we're coming off the Terry McLaurin turf toe injury, so that stings. But when you look at when you look at the next man up mentality, though, and thankfully Terry McLaurin should be okay, but it's you look at that and say, okay, is this going to be a lingering injury? What's this going to do during the season for him? But then you look at Jahan Dotson. I've always said, and we've said, especially this offseason, like they have a sneaky good team, this Washington Commanders team. When you look all the way down the line with Terry McLaurin. And then we're talking about Jahan Dotson, and then their two running backs in Brian Robinson. You can just go down the line and say, okay, this is actually a sneaky good team. And Sam Howell, for what it's worth, and I know it's preseason, has not looked awful, right? So you can see little glimpses. You can see glimpses. But I think Jahan Dotson too, he had the nagging hamstring injury, which was that I understand why people look at that and they say, hey, I'm a little nervous to take Jahan Dotson. But if you look at the whole talent profile, like you've been talking about, and you say, okay, he's going up there, and sometimes those the high touchdown percentages are viewed sometimes in the fantasy world as, oh, it's fluky, it's busted coverage, whatever it is. But you can go back at like what you've talked about and say, no, he's actually just been that good. His production was more due to him winning than anything else in the league last year. And so Jahan Dotson, if you're not, you shouldn't be nervous to take him, because I've talked to people who are like, oh, I'm just nervous. I want it to be Terry McLaurin, and it's already a bad quarterback. But yeah, you're right. If I'm sitting here preaching Christian Watson, I have definitely been taking Jahan Dotson this year as well, because I think he can overcome even, mediocre quarterback play. If that's what Sam Howell is, I still think he can overcome because he has the talent to do it.
Yeah, I understand like his touchdown rate is going to regress, but go tell me, go watch the tape and tell me why those touchdowns are fluky. I think those are reappeatable instances, the skills that he shows there. One piece of news to update, we just talked about Corey Davis earlier in the show. He just retired from the NFL. So everything we said about he will, you can go ahead and take it to the bank. What we said earlier, he will not be on the field for week 1. So Corey Davis has retired. So for the Randall Cobb bros, this is the year. Seriously, let's get your next breakout candidate here, Kendall. Are we sticking with receivers, or are we sticking at a different position?
No, let's move around. Let's go to a running back here. And this is someone that when you said breakouts and when you sent me everything, I was like, I know exactly the one person that's going to be on my list is James Cook for the Buffalo Bills. So he is on my list as well.
Yes,
so we
share this.
I told people, I said, if I don't get one of these, damn breakouts out and I don't have the same one as Matt Harmon, I'm not doing my job correctly. And I really need to reevaluate my life. So I'm so excited that you said that. But James Cook, man, I try not to remember. People bring this up and it makes me laugh, but they're like, hey, remember when James Cook's first career touch was a fumble? And I was like, yes, but he didn't do that since. And I really do. I look around this Bills running back room and I say, he is going to have such a bigger role this year. And I truly, truly believe that he is going to have this bigger role that makes you go back and say, he was going where in drafts? I got him in what round of drafts when all these other guys were going? I mean, his ADP right now is 80. You know what I mean? And so this is seriously going to be someone to me that when you look back and you say, yeah, I got James Cook this year, that he was going to be a big difference maker on your fantasy team. And I really believe that the Buffalo Bills are going to go into this season with a bigger role for James Cook, and he's going to take advantage of it. And you're not going to be burned. I know people, last year were on James Cook. And sometimes I think, hey, if you were on James Cook last year, you were just a year too early. And it's okay. You can say the same name twice in a year. You really don't have to say, oh, he burned me last year, I don't want to go back to the well, because now you can look at it and say, okay, what's going on around him, and what's, who is around him, and you can look down the line and say, he's gonna pay off his ADP for me, especially going with the 80 mark. I mean, it's just really going to pay off this year, especially in the passing game too.
Yeah, I don't know that he has like a top 12 running back ceiling, but he's definitely an ADP beater to me. He's been rising up. He was like outside the top 30 backs. He's now kind of in the high 20s, right? Like running back 27. I still have him ranked quite a bit ahead of consensus. I moved him up today actually to just again be like, yo, let's make sure you're taking James Cook like over some of these guys. These guys are all going to have their moments, but like Rachaad White playing with the Bucks, James Conner, who I talked about earlier, playing with the Arizona Cardinals, Cam Akers playing with the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think the Rams they're going to be a little hit and miss this year. Javante's going ahead of him. Javante we know has the injury situation and plays with the Broncos. I don't know that their offense is going to be very good this year. Like, I love to attach my fantasy running backs to good offenses. The Bills are going to be a good offense. And I don't know about you, but when Damian Harris signed there, I was initially like, I'm going to be in on Damian Harris this year. But he hasn't had an injury-free offseason. They have been very excited about Cook, who, I think he has a 3-down skill set, right? Like, we want to be drafting guys that are attached to good offenses and guys that play in the passing game. He checks both boxes and showed off some explosive ability as a rookie. So I agree with you here. I've got James Cook on my list. I think it's wheels up for him.
And just like on route participation alone, he can pay off the ADP, right?
Yes.
You look at, it's a pass first offense. And I talk so much on Sirius XM, and I tell people, hey, you want a little slice. I know they're expensive, but you want a slice of the pie on some of these teams. And the Buffalo Bills are one of them. Like, you want to be able to get in there. So to pay off your ADP just on route participation alone, Dwayne has him projected for 38% of the rushing attempts with 50% route participation. And if that happens, that's like 13.6 fantasy, points per game. And then you add in the other element of just him in the passing game and more things that could happen. It's just, he's going to, and it's not pretty, right? You don't look at James Cook and go, oh yeah, that's my league winner, but he really does have the chance to go out there and seriously outperform. The outlook is like the RB3 floor and then an RB1 ceiling, to me at least.
Totally agree. He's going to have to stink to be a big miss at ADP. Really? And I don't think he stinks. I will continue the theme here of second year running backs. And this is the guy that my wife's cousin was trying to throw me in breakout jail for. You can't call Dameon Pierce a breakout. He broke out last year, but I'm going to go ahead and call him a breakout here on this list. Maybe I'm pushing it. Maybe Kendall also will report me to the breakout police here, but again, he's going off the board running back 18. I have him ranked. I pushed him all the way up to running back 13. Over Najee Harris, over Aaron Jones, over Breece Hall, who I mentioned I like. But listen, it's just Damian Harris is going to have the role we want from a fantasy running back. He is going to be a full down player. We've seen that in preseason. I like Devin Singletary. He's a nice player, but he was always signed to be a change of pace guy. Pierce was good as a rookie, top 10 in broken tackle rate, top 10 in missed tackles forced, top 10 in yards after contact per attempt. I mean, his yards after contact per attempt is pretty similar to a guy like Derrick Henry, pretty similar to a guy like Josh Jacobs. He's good at the game. I think we know he's a good running back. Obviously, how good is the Texans offense going to be? I think they would be hard pressed to be worse, and they've been like unwatchably bad the last couple of years. The offensive line has some players on it. Obviously, Laramie Tunsil, they can get healthier there too. I think Nico Collins, who we mentioned on the Sleeper Show, I think he's going to be a breakout receiver this year. I think the rest of their guys are solid. This offense can be good enough for Dameon Pierce to be a breakout candidate this year. So again, he's pushing it. I get it. He's on the rise, but he was for a long time ranked as like the running back 20. I think that's like he can break out from being a solid running back to potentially, I think, being a running back 1 this year.
He is also on my list. So I'm really crushing
Perfect.
it here today. Is just that's really what I wanted to do. Is I was like, I need to make sure that I have at least two of the same breakouts as Matt Harmon, and then I'm doing okay. But
well, we'll see if we get any receivers. We'll see if we're in line on any receivers.
The receivers are tough. The receivers are. Yeah. I'll give you that one. Receivers are tough, but I think with, like you said, with Dameon Pierce, if you love football, you're just a huge fan of Dameon Pierce, and to me, where he's been going in drafts is something that I've taken advantage of because it just never made much sense to me when I was in these underdog drafts and when I was going over to DraftKings, wherever you draft, like it just didn't make sense because I said he has the upside to be what you need. And when I was going 0 RB, I think I did this in Scott Fishbowl. He was my first running back taken. Now I didn't love it at the time, but now as the weeks have progressed and we've seen what we have in the preseason, like he's going to have the role that we wanted him to have with the Texans. And I agree, it'll be tough for the Texans to be as bad as they have been. But we say that now and we could come back to this episode and be like, wow, were we just really naive? But I think that Dameon Pierce could build this bigger role in the Texans offense this season because he flashed that ability as a rookie, especially as a runner. And what hurt was the touchdown inefficiency. And he finished as the RB21 in PPR points per game last season. And you can look at that and everyone can see that and say, okay, I don't really love that. And it's not a lock, right, that he just opens up a bigger role with the passing game specifically. But I think with the new coaches in town, I think with CJ Stroud there, I think they're going to try and make everything work so that it's not the Texans of old. It's this new Texans team coming in. So I'm really in on Dameon Pierce, especially right now, because he was way too late in draft. Now people have kind of come around on him, but I'm still taking him now.
Yeah, same here. I actually literally wrote in our breakout articles group piece on Yahoo, I wrote, if you love football, you should love how Dameon Pierce plays the game. So we're 100% on the same page there. We're this is great from a positive episode here on the breakout candidates. All right, give me another one from your list here.
Let's go. See, this is one where I'm going to say it, and then people are going to be like, oh, well, you kind of already broke out. But I really do want to say that this could be a big season for Jerry Jeudy and the Denver Broncos. Is that one okay? Are we okay with that?
I mean, this is one. No, you can say it. You can say it, but I'm going to have a lot of pushback on it. But go for it. Just because I'm out on Jerry Jeudy, but maybe listen, the people need a different perspective than just mine.
Listen, I wanted to go either Jerry Jeudy or I wanted to go Javonte Williams here because I did want one or the other. And I went with Dameon Pierce. So I said, let's revisit Jerry Jeudy here this season and see what he can do. Talk about someone that has burned us and not been fun. Oh, yeah. And it hasn't been fun. And for me, when I look at this, I covered the Broncos for 3 years when I was in Denver doing sports talk radio. And every single season,
what years?
The bad ones, all the horrible ones. What do you mean? The awful ones. I've never gotten a good. Manning? Yeah, no, I've never gotten a good season with the Denver Broncos. I was there in 2018. I was there in 2019. I was there in 2020. It was awful. It was horrible years. And then I leave. Right, I'm from Seattle, so I'm a Seahawks fan. I've always loved Russell Wilson. So I leave, and they sign Russell Wilson, and I thought to myself, well, of course, this is the year they go win the Super Bowl with Russell Wilson, my old quarterback, and it didn't do it. So to me, I look at Jerry Jeudy, and he is someone, this is the only reason why I put him potentially on this breakout watch, is because he is someone that if things go well for the Denver Broncos this year, I might be really, really, really nervous if I don't have enough of him on my teams. And there's not a lot of guys that we can sit back and say, okay, he's potentially going to help you and push you to a league championship. And it's just someone that I look back and I saw my exposure. We've got the best ball hub at fantasylife.com, and I saw my exposure to him. And I just said, you know what? I think I need a little bit more. And pairing him with Russell Wilson in some of these best ball drafts especially has been so easy because Russ goes so far down the line. So last year when he was healthy, he flashed the type of upside that we hoped that we would see with him earlier. And if he's able to stay healthy this year, I just get really nervous that I don't have enough shares of him. But I understand he is such a polarizing player, and people either really like him or they don't. I want to say I'm right in the middle. But it is someone that when I looked at my exposure and I said, okay, who have I not had enough of, especially in those earlier rounds? It's just someone that makes me a little bit nervous if I don't have him on some of my squads.
Let me tell you what, if he hits, you think you're nervous, I will be more nervous.
Your 0% is going to be really tough.
Yes, the 0% will be tough. And a lot of people will be ready to tell me I was wrong about this one. Because again, I've just been out on Judy where he goes at this point. I've got him ranked as like a wide receiver, a volatile receiver 3. And he goes more in like that 2 range. For me, I think you need a lot to go right. I won't, I've talked about Judy plenty on the podcast, so I'm not going to give all my points on it here. But
I saw your face when I brought him up.
I was disappointed. We were doing so well. We were doing so well.
I just had to ruin it.
Debate and disagreement is actually a very good thing. So if you like Kendall's argument for Jerry Jeudy, you can go with Jerry Jeudy. For me, again, it's the volatility within his individual performance. I think he's a good receiver. I think he's not going to be a true number 1. I don't think there will be enough gap from a usage perspective between him and Courtland Sutton and the rest of the receivers. I like Marvin Mims as a second half guy there. And we're counting on Russell Wilson to improve. And preseason hasn't been great. Camp report hasn't been great. We could be seeing Jarrett Stidham at some point this year. So that risk, I think, is not priced into his ADP at all, which is the thing that even if I'm wrong about the player evaluation, I can get that wrong, and Jerry Jeudy can still be a questionable pick this year.
Yeah, I wake up with like night terrors of thinking about how bad the Denver Broncos could be again this year. And if that is what it is, we're all in trouble. Because Russell Wilson's one of my favorite later quarterback stacks to do if I'm waiting on the position and I say, okay, now I can finally go out and get Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, whatever it is. And you know what? I loved Tim Patrick this year. And you know what? We can't have nice things. So Tim Patrick's gone. I was sad. Marvin Mims, could be really good. Kind of that, not better than Jonathan Mingo, of course, but someone that he was going way late. And with Tim Patrick out, he could come around. So Jerry Jeudy, it's going to hurt when it doesn't happen. But I'll just come listen back to this podcast and say, okay, that was not fun.
I will give you simply your props for suffering through the 2019 Denver Broncos with Joe Flacco and Drew Lock.
It was incredible.
Remember when they brought out the banner in 2018 for signing Case Keenum? My God, the Broncos have had some days.
Yeah, I watched Kendall Hinton play quarterback at one point. So it was that's where I was. Thoughts and prayers to all of Broncos country. You guys have been through it.
I'll go with a name here who has certainly burned people, and it's Elijah Moore. I'll stick at the receiver position here. I think Elijah Moore. Look, I would never advise somebody to get into a fight with their coaching staff in the middle of a 5-game win streak or whatever it was. Don't think that was the right thing to do, but I do think he had a point from a usage perspective. I think he's a really good player who had a really great, you don't have to go back far or go into hypotheticals. We know Elijah Moore had a great rookie year. He was awesome in college. I think the role they'll have him in this year as he moves around to all 3 receiver positions, he moves around the formation is probably a good role for him. I think it's a little more akin to what he was doing in college. Good route runner, good separator. I am not going to sit here and cape for Deshaun Watson, obviously. But I do think he can have a better season this year, simply just being involved with the team and everything. Although, off-season reports for him, if I'm going to say it for Russell Wilson, you got to say off-season reports have been mixed for Deshaun Watson. But I think where Elijah Moore goes, the talent is too much to deny. I think he has a breakout season this year. And again, what does he break out to? I think he breaks out from absolutely completely unusable last year to a guy who's a solid high-end receiver 3.
Yeah. Hey, we're back. I derailed us a little bit with Jerry Jeudy, and now this was also another name on my form. So I know I'm back, and I know we're good to go because I was a little bit I was nervous about saying more and saying Deshaun Watson. Because we've said, hey, a bet on these guys is a bet also on the quarterback that is coming around to them. And I am I don't love Deshaun Watson in any sense with that kind of stuff. And I just hope that we look at Deshaun Watson and we say, can he go back to what he was previously years ago? And this is another offense where you say, man, they can't get worse, right? And then you look around and say, they may not get worse, but they could stay the same. And that's right.
How much better?
Exactly. How much better could they get? I could say the same thing with the Broncos. But then they're going to have 7 wins and it's still not going to be as good as you want it to be. So with Moore, I think that he can be someone to me that breaks out of the mold that he was in before. And I think that, he's working alongside some of these guys that I'm okay also with taking. I do like Amari Cooper. He sometimes gets a little bit expensive for me. And then you go down and you say, okay, then you're waiting for Donovan Peoples-Jones and you're saying, saying, that's not necessarily where I want to go. So I think that, if Deshaun Watson does take that step forward, he's obviously, and we know he's capable of really holding together these really more elite wide receivers like we've seen. And so if they can be able to share Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore, I think Elijah Moore does benefit from a really good season or an even better season from Deshaun Watson. Same with David Njoku too. That was a tight end last year that I loved. If we were going to see, a really good season from Watson last year, I thought, okay, it's going to be Njoku too. But Elijah Moore does seem to be able to, be the beneficiary of good quarterback play. And if Deshaun Watson does come back like that this season, I think we're going to have a lot of really good, fantasy players across the board here on this team.
Usually the truth is in the middle. And that's kind of where I feel like we're going to get with Deshaun Watson. Like, he probably never gets back to the heights of Houston, but he probably won't be as bad as he was last year when he quite literally was among the worst and least efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think the truth will be in the middle there. I would also say too, I think Kevin Stefanski is a good offensive play caller, and I think it's kind of on Deshaun to fit more into the system. And for Stefanski a little bit to meet him in the middle too. So again, a lot of it is meeting in the middle here. All right, give me another one from your list, and we'll see if we got the same going here.
Well, so can we do rookies, or are we out on rookies? Are we not doing rookie breakouts?
We can do rookie breakouts.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure because I was nervous. I didn't know if I heard it right at the beginning, if we couldn't do rookies. And I just wanted to throw one out there. And no, it is not Anthony Richardson, although that does seem like a really easy one to say, like Anthony Richardson's going to be that guy. I wanted to bring up Jordan Addison with the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay, yeah.
And I wanted to bring him up only because, we've got news with, I love, like I said, I'm a Seahawks fan. So I love Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be really good. And with that wrist fracture, I'm just like, okay, we can't believe anything Pete Carroll says. He said 3 to 4 weeks. So let's just tack on another 2, like maybe 5 to 6 weeks if we're okay there. But Jordan Addison, to me, out of the rookies, right? And the top 3 for me are Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, and JSN. He has the clearest path to me of having this fantasy success with a potential full-time role, right? And that's not to knock KJ Osborne at all. Like I think that KJ Osborne is a good wide receiver, but I think Jordan Addison is just going to be able to just totally pull away, leapfrog, do whatever he needs to do to make this season for him, his rookie year especially, just one of the better ones. And so, for being a borderline wide receiver 3, he's going next to guys like Treylon Burks, and he's going next to Deontay Johnson, who I love Deontay Johnson, and Jahan Dotson as well. I just think that that's someone that when you look around and you want to get in on some of those rookies that aren't named, Quentin Johnston, that aren't named JSN, who can sometimes, especially JSN was getting expensive. I think Jordan Addison has this path. And yes, there is that guy across that we all know in Justin Jefferson. And I like Kirk Cousins too. If we keep talking about the quarterbacks, like I think Kirk Cousins can be able to perform well enough to have both of those guys have really, really solid seasons. But I really like Jordan Addison going into this year.
I don't have Jordan Addison on my list, but I like this call a lot. I said the weirdest thing that's happened to me over the last 2 months or so is that I've become like extremely Kirk pilled. I think Kirk is I think we've gotten to a point now where Kirk is like really good and he's underrated. He's been a punching bag throughout his career, but I think he took a lot of punishment last year. I think they asked a lot more of Kirk Cousins in the offense last year than some of those like boomer ball run heavy, like just stay within the guardrails of the offense, play action heavy attacks in Minnesota previously. And I think adding Jordan Addison across from, you mentioned Justin Jefferson, he's the most truly coverage dictating receiver in the NFL. Jordan Addison, and Kevin O'Connell brought this up in the post-draft press conference, if you're just now tuning back into football, which is understandable. It's great that you have a real life. I don't, but it's great that you people have a real life. Like he brought up that he's just going to get the easiest looks in the entire league, which is so true. I mean, he's going to get number 2 coverage. He's like Justin Jefferson. You have to dedicate those resources to stopping him. I think Addison is going to be able to eat in those situations. I think it's a perfect role for him.
Yeah.
And again, going off the board is like the 39th wide receiver, the 89th pick overall. I think he's the rare rookie receiver who will get off to a hot start and could still exceed expectations in the second half of the year.
Yeah, and with Thielen gone too, I mean, how many targets is that up for grabs now? It just kind of makes sense for me and Jordan Addison, and like I said, I love JSN, I love Quentin Johnston, so there's a good crop of rookies in there that we can definitely talk about breaking out, and of course there's Anthony Richardson who's going to be phenomenal, but to me Jordan Addison is one that I think is a little overlooked, not so much. I think his current ADP is probably priced pretty right with everything going on, but man, I think he could have a big year. I think.
All right, we're getting up against it here, so we'll go a little more rapid fire on these last few. I will introduce a quarterback here because we haven't had any quarterback talk. And let me tell you what, Kendall, if Daniel Jones doesn't work out this year, my fantasy season is over. Because when I have not taken an elite quarterback, which, okay, those teams, I said all the time on the show, my only good teams last year were like my Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts teams. So I guess we can go back to that again. If Daniel Jones doesn't work out, those will be my only good teams this year, because basically anytime I haven't taken one of those elite quarterbacks, I've kind of just found that I've been passing on that middle tier. As much as I like guys like Herbert and Fields, I just end up wanting to take receivers and running backs in that range. I usually am not the one to take the plunge on Deshaun Watson, who goes from an ADP perspective. We talked about this with Dan Titus yesterday. He goes pretty early, and consensus ADP is like the 72nd overall player. That's really not where I'm wanting to take quarterbacks. And if I end up waiting, Daniel Jones is the QB 14, 99th overall player. When you look at ceiling guys late in the draft, there's certainly Anthony Richardson, but Daniel Jones from a rushing perspective is going to get you there. I think that Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka, the offense that they called last year, which was a little conservative and a little run heavy. Well, of course it was, because their two best players were their rushing quarterback and their running back. Darren Waller, if he stays healthy, I love Darren Waller this year. He's in for a great role, if he can stay on the field. Their receiver room isn't great, but they have a lot of different sets of skills to throw at this thing. They have about 100 slot receivers. Sterling Shepard, always keep the candle lit for Sterling Shepard. They have Paris Campbell, who can be kind of a speed slot flanker guy. They've got Isaiah Hodgins, who I think flashed. Darius Slayton's always good for a couple of good moments. And Jalen Hyatt, the rookie receiver, can take the top off too. Not a full-time player, I think, in year one, but a guy that is going to, have those bigger moments for Daniel Jones. So I think Daniel Jones legitimately could be the late round league winner at quarterback this year, has a top 5 ceiling. And again, he's being drafted outside the top 12 quarterbacks right now. Kendall, again, if I'm wrong on Daniel Jones, just wave the white flag on my fantasy season.
I'll let you know. I'm there with you, so I'll send you a text and just be like, RIP, because if he's not good, and my Darren Waller shares too. I mean, Darren Waller is one of my most drafted players this year. And so if Daniel Jones isn't good, then I'm going to be sitting there in a puddle of tears with you. But Daniel Jones, it does not make sense to me where he goes in drafts, because we saw last year, people saw that, Brian Daboll was a great coach last season. And we saw that, and we saw how far that took them. And I know that people want to look at the New York Giants and say, oh, they're going to regress, right? The games that they won, they shouldn't have won. Some of them were too close. It's not going to happen. And I just look around and I say, why do we think that? It's the same thing with Geno Smith. And I know the sample 100%. is the sample is there, and I get it. We never got to see him before that with that full-time role. But again, with those two, especially where they're going close together, it doesn't make sense to me with what we saw last year, because Daniel Jones, what is the stat that I love? One of just 9 quarterbacks to ever register 3,000 plus passing yards, and then like over 700 rushing yards in a season. And so the fantasy floor is there, the fantasy ceiling is there, everything is there for him to have such a great year. And you add, right? It's just like Geno Smith. You add someone like JSN, you add someone like Darren Waller, and you get Saquon back, thankfully. I look around and I just say, you know what? I'm buying into him. And I don't know why people like to fade guys that just had a good season, thinking that they're going to regress so much that it won't be worth them picking in fantasy. I'm with you. I like to wait on quarterbacks. And if you're waiting on quarterbacks, I think Jones is such a good one to wait on and get.
Perfect. Love that. Again, I'm glad if it goes down, we'll be shredded together. So hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it works out.
No, we'll be absolutely awful. It'll be fine. We'll be absolutely awful.
All right. Give me the rest of your list. I'll give you the rest of my list. We'll see if we have any overlapping names here.
Honestly, because how many overlaps we had, you have my list. I was thankful that we stopped where we did with my last guy, because you have my list. That those were my guys.
Perfect. All right. Well, here's the rest of my list. You can tell me if you disagree or agree with any of mine. I do have Drake London. Look, I know Desmond Ridder, a little frightening, but I think the player's good. I think I read Derek Klassen's quarterback profile on reception perception, and I was hoping for better. Let's just say that. But I do think Drake London makes sense as a high-end breakout candidate. On the other end, I have Rashad Bateman as a breakout candidate. I think look, I'm going to say they had me do this draft day blueprint piece this year where it's like you need to read this before you get on the clock, whatever. I said my one thing I want to leave every draft with is one of the Ravens receivers. Obviously Beckham you can't count as a breakout candidate, but Rashad Bateman I think is a good player that should have had his season last year. He just needs to stay healthy. I think Zay Flowers is my second favorite rookie receiver after JSN this year from a talent perspective, and I believe in that offense's evolution. And then rookie tight ends. I think rookie tight ends are all breakout candidates this year. Kincaid, Sam Laporta, Luke Musgrave. And I would have mentioned Chigo Okonkwo, but Scott stole him on the sleeper show, so he doesn't count here. So any of those guys you agree or disagree with?
I love the rookie tight end call out because I was nervous when I was writing my rookies in here. I was like, I don't know if they want rookies or if they're going to be okay with rookies because a rookie breakout is really tough. But, whenever we say rookie tight end breakout, we have to understand, too, that tight ends in their first year in the NFL for fantasy football, it is so hard for them to have a season that you look back on and say, OK, this was a good pick. Right. It doesn't happen. And that's just you can go like historically with the data. It just does not happen. But when you look at Sam Laporta, especially when you look at Sam Laporta and say, okay, he's got a shot here. And same with like Luke Musgrave, that is someone that is going so late in drafts. But I think I love the call out. And I think to me, at least, Matt, when I say, because we talk about this a lot on SiriusXM, when we go through, Sam Laporta and some of those other rookie tight ends, when I say that they're going to have a good season, that means they'll hopefully break the top 12, right? The top 10. Right. We're not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, it's going to be a top 3, tight end this year. Oh yeah, he's going to push for, the Dallas Goedert, Pat Freiermuth numbers. Like that's not, I'm hoping they crack the top 10, the top 12 really for me when I look at those rookies because they don't do that. They just don't do that usually. But with this tight end class that came in, and I think what it was said that it was the best tight end class in over however many years. Like if we're coming into that class, then one of them with the role that they're going to have this year has to be it. And so I really, especially though, I love Sam Laporta going into this year.
All right, to recap, Kendall's list: Christian Watson, James Cook, Damian Pierce, Jerry Jeudy, Jordan Addison, Elijah Moore. My list: Jahan Dotson, Elijah Moore, Drake London, Damian Pierce, James Cook, Daniel Jones, and then I cheated and said Rashad Bateman / Zay Jones, and then just rookie tight ends I think are breakout candidates this year. Dalton Kincaid, obviously, if you want to make the headline, it's Dalton Kincaid, but I think all of these guys, Laporta is worth mentioning, Luke Musgrave is worth mentioning. We didn't even talk about Michael Mayer.
I know. I feel so bad. I haven't talked about him once this offseason. Maybe it's the Raiders. I just can't. I don't know.
I think that's certainly fair. All right, Kendall, this was great. We had a lot of overlap. We had some differences, which was great. That's how you know it's a good show. This was awesome. Really appreciate you doing this with us.
Yeah, no, Matt, this was so fun. I'm glad. Like I said, I just needed to walk out of here with at least 2 of the same guys. And then I knew I did a good job. So we did that. And I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun.
Absolutely. Make sure you're checking out everything Kendall and the Fantasy Life crew are up to this year. I just wanted to leave this show feeling better after, the bus show yesterday, which I certainly do. We much more prefer the rosy, positive nonsense here on this show, which is great. All right. That is going to do it for us today, folks. If it's a social media app, Yahoo Fantasy is there. At Yahoo Fantasy on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm also begrudgingly on social media as well at Matt Harmon _BYB. Kendall, obviously director of social media, is very happily on social media at K Valenzuela 17. You can find her there. You can also watch this show. If you want to see my giant water bottle every now and again, you could see that on YouTube at Yahoo Sports. We conclude Convictions Week on the podcast tomorrow with the Betting Bros, Frank Schwab and Scott Pianowski. Oh, the boys are back, baby. The boys are back with their great bets and inane movie references that go way over my head and songs you haven't heard in the last 20 years. They're back. They joined the podcast to share their favorite bets for the 2023 season. Until then, we're out.